The 2023 animated series Scavengers Reign, created by Joseph Bennett and Charles Huettner, is the greatest love letter to ecology I have seen in fiction. I mean, this show is beautiful. A very weird, sometimes disturbing beautiful, but this is Ecology. This show really challenged me to think about my relationship to the natural world. After all, ecology is the study of relationships, whether that is between different individuals of one species, between species, or with their broader ecosystem. This show elegantly, viscerally, horrifyingly reminded me that humans are nested within a broader ecology, something I know to be true but is so easy to forget in our modern world. So that is what this video is about. Relationships with and in nature, and how it's all a bit queer. By the way, if it hasn't been clear, this is a spoiler-containing video, so if you haven't seen Scavengers Reign, watch it. If I were to distill the core premise of this show, I would say it's about people from a technological interstellar society, the pinnacle of what we would call the artificial, being forced to reconcile with the natural world after long being alienated from it. Scavengers Reign follows 5 survivors: Ursula, Sam, Cayman, Ozzy, and the robot Levi, which are stranded on the planet Vesta after they were forced to abandon their damaged freighter, the Demeter 227. The series then follows the survivors negotiating this biodiverse planet as they attempt to reach the wreckage of their ship after Sam and Ursula are able to initiate an emergency landing protocol in the first episode. While we don't live in a world of massive interstellar freighters, we are nonetheless, like these 5 characters, estranged from the ecological systems we rely on. Around the world, more and more people live in cities, concrete environments, sterile lands made to house an ever-growing population. Our connection to nature through even food is disjointed by supply chains. However, cities are not actually devoid of nature. Through both human action and the general adaptability of life, other species have colonized these artificial spaces, blurring that line, the false binary of natural and artificial. Because, like all binaries, it is infinitely more complex. Introduced by Kate Sandilands in 1994, queer ecology is simply the application of queer theory to how humans interact with various organisms, an attempt to break apart the binary of the human, or artificial, and the natural, to see all of our earth and sea as one. However, that does not mean nature is some magical, harmonious garden. Nature is brutal. Nature is cruel. The thing I find particularly powerful about queer ecology over some other environmentalist philosophies is how the inherent breakdown of binaries deconstructs the appeal to nature fallacy, the concept that nature equals good and artificial equals bad. Scavengers Reign doesn't shy away from the brutal reality of nature. The alien horror of Vesta is critical to keep nature, no matter how beautiful, from being romanticized like some other ecological science fiction. Nature is amoral. The planet Vesta is trying to kill our protagonists, not out of malice, but because they are just one of many species living their lives upon the planet's surface, and relationships with nature come in many forms. Nature is as likely to let you witness something wonderful or enter an egalitarian symbiosis as nature is to bring you into some toxic parasitic relationship or see you as prey. The appeal to nature is a common logical fallacy you see in environmental discourse that often weakens environmentalist arguments. But it is also used by bigots who use it against queer people, because queer people are said to be unnatural and thus bad. This is, of course, nonsense, because queer people are as much a part of nature as the straights. Honestly, my transition experience has made me more in touch with my own biology. Ultimately, it's all made of the same stuff. Matter that was born of the Big Bang billions of years ago. At that scale, some arbitrary binary is completely ridiculous. Everything is nature. A coral reef is nature. A tropical rainforest is nature. Interactions between subatomic particles are nature. Imploding stars are nature. You are nature. A complex relationship between cells from dozens of species, with about half of the cells in your body belonging to some symbiotic or commensal bacteria, which help you digest or even influence your mental health. They are a part of you, just as you are part of a larger ecology. To pretend otherwise is ultimately self-destructive. When thrown against the amorality of nature in such an intimate way, control over nature is quickly dismantled and shattered as an illusion. Queer ecology inherits the general framework of connecting the exploitation of nature and marginalized people under patriarchal systems from ecofeminism. I cannot help but notice the gendered and intersectional aspects of each character's arc. The two women of color and the robot, whom I read as trans, each growing more connected with the natural world of Vesta, while the two straight white guys resist Vesta, with their character arcs centering around control and ultimately losing it. Sam is the most resistant to a worldview that the natural and artificial can be reconciled. This is despite him being the character that seems to have the most experience with the natural world. He is essentially the archetypal good captain, save the part where he just sort of leaves the ship with people still on it. Other than that, though, he is a man with an immense burden of responsibility, a duty to save his crew, which drives him to clash with his more curious companion, Ursula. He, though, has a central fear, losing control of his life. And as other characters transform mentally or physically, Sam fights it, missing out on Vesta's beauty and often coming up against Vesta's darker, more horrifying side. Upon realizing that he is no longer in control, Sam ultimately chooses death rather than risking the crew. Sam, though, has a much more secure masculinity than Cayman. If there is a villain of Scavenger's reign beyond the amorality of Vesta, it is Cayman's toxic masculinity.
Fuck Cayman.
We see time and time again throughout the show how his failure to be a man directly leads to reckless decisions. The guy almost drowns in a flashback because he is upset he cannot start a fire, something traditionally associated with masculinity. Then we see how his marriage disintegrates, and he begins banking on showing he is a breadwinner with a successful career, the thing that drove his wife away to begin with. He, when his authority is challenged by another man, major spoilers, goes behind Sam's back and changes the ship's course.
I outrank you, Sam, and everyone else on this bridge. You don't need to get anyone in here, because I'm in charge, goddammit!
And a solar flare from an unstable star he was warned about debilitates the ship, leading to everyone being stranded on Vesta and responsible for his wife's death. That is the thing about Cayman. He is at fault, but also it's rather tragic. He's just some insecure, self-important guy who makes terrible decisions, the victim of choices he made in line with a system he is part of and reinforces. After living with that guilt, slowly starving in his escape pod, he crosses paths with one of the local critters, Hollow. So Hollow is part of a species that uses telepathy and telekinesis to force other species to collect food for them. And wielding Cayman's anger and guilt, Hollow makes Cayman collect food, soon realizing how useful having a human to control is. Transitioning from a frugivorous diet to meat, and even cannibalism, as Cayman is stripped back to the Stone Age, when humans much more intimately filled the ecological niche of predator, even if that is in the service of a toxic relationship with a mind-reading alien. While Sam and Cayman are destroyed by Vesta, the other three characters experience a different side to the planet. Ursula is probably my favorite character, in that I heavily relate to her. She is curious and clearly yearns for a relationship with the natural world, probably part of her upbringing in a crumbling city. On Vesta, she sees the complex ecological connections in a way that others don't, and uses that to be highly resourceful, which, guided through Sam's desire to save his crew, certainly kept the pair alive. A clear example of her differing approach can be seen in the third and fourth episode, where Sam just sees a hostile environment full of danger, Ursula sees an ecosystem. Where Sam sees a worm eating a smelly fruit, and then a velociraptor-looking alien showing up as separate, unrelated things, we have already been shown that the fruit came from seeds inside one of these velociraptor-looking aliens that fell from the canopy. And Ursula starts putting that together. While Sam runs to escape the wall closing in, She gets drawn to a shiny object, leading to the hauntingly beautiful pollination scene, or I guess technically the receiver scene, of a flower blooming and a little bipedal frogman using a little starfish pollen thing from a glowing orb to activate the flower and open pores to accept the rest of the glowing orbs. The frogman then falls into a fetal position and shrivels up and dies. The flower then buries the little guy back where the flower pulled them out of just a minute ago. The circle of life and death complete in just moments. This is the world rewarding her desire for connection to the natural world with something profound.
I think we were talking to each other. No, wait, that's not quite right. It's hard to explain. It was fascinating.
Talking to who, Ursula?
The rest of the show sees her grow into the eventual leader of the survivors as she learns to take on some of Sam's most admirable attributes as a leader. She still must learn some hard lessons about not being above Vesta's ecology, to unlearn the appeal to nature fallacy, and Sam is critical to give her a purpose and perspective that keeps her from being swallowed by Vesta's ruthless amorality while smelling the alien flowers. While Ursula is certainly the most relatable character to me, it is the last two characters, Ozzy and Levi, that I think represent a much more queer way forward in our relationship with nature. Like Ursula, Ozzy is highly alienated from nature, but also clearly alienates herself from other people, as we see in her hesitance to pursue a relationship back on the ship with one of the colonists, Mia. At the beginning of the show, she has the luck of having supplies from the ship crash next to her, giving her a bike, supplies to build a greenhouse, and most importantly, a robot, Levi. Designed to lift, move, and unload cargo, Levi is the antithesis of nature, the literal symbol of industrialization. But then Levi touches a white flower. These white flowers are shown throughout the show to grow from the bodies of the dead on Vesta, and when Levi touches the flower, something grows fungus-like into Levi, the biological and the technological integrating into something new and whole. Because according to queer ecology, no matter what you do, you are part of nature, both of this planet and nature on a cosmic scale. This biological material quickly colonizes much of Levi's circuits, and as the show progresses, Levi is shown to be more and more sentient, a rewilding of something we might typically see as purely artificial. Slowly, Ozzy realizes that Levi is becoming more than just a cargo robot, and she begins to see Vesta with new eyes. The stampede scene turns from a desperate bid for survival to a beautiful, almost meditative experience. And when she finds the fish to clear her inflamed rash, she simultaneously connects to the planet and accepts Levi as a person. I read this as a relatively queer narrative, specifically the trans experience. Ozzy struggles to see Levi as anything more than a machine, taking forever to accept who Levi is becoming. Transition comes with actualization, self-discovery, new sensations. I find the friendship that forms between Ozzy and Levi to be a really powerful example of queer friendship, and in turn how that broadens their relationship to nature and humanity as a whole. And then Levi is destroyed by Hollow. This, though, is not the end, because the tiny insects that Levi has been befriending this whole time pick up all the tiny parts and put Levi back together. The destructive act, not the death of Levi, but the final step in Levi's transition. Because now Levi's internal biological reality is external. Yes, you can see parts of the old mechanical frame, but this is no longer a robot.
Are you a Levi?
I think I used to be.
Wow. What happened to you? Did you come down with the ship?
I was born here.
It is this transitioned Levi who ultimately defeats the toxic masculinity of Cayman, not by slaying the monster, but by forcing Cayman to see his insignificant place in the universe. We see the solar system form, land masses rise and fall, species evolve, and yes, also the story of Cayman and his many mistakes. As ecofeminist Donna Haraway states, humans are not the only important actors. They, along with other beings, are, with and of the earth, and the biotic and abiotic powers of this earth are the main story. with the assertion that species man does not make history, man plus tools does not make history, what we view as history must give way to geostories. In the end, Cayman survives and has a place with the rest of the survivors, just decentered from power, showing a rare vision of masculine liberation from the system that leverages toxic masculinity to dominate everyone, human and non-human alike. In his final scene, Cayman even makes a connection with another possible victim of a toxic relationship with one of Hollow's species. This scene, along with many others of Levi, Ursula, and Ozzy connecting to Vesta's wildlife, fits into an idea from Haraway's work, making kin. For Haraway, kin means something other than entities bound by ancestry. It signifies new kinds of relations between humans and non-humans alike. She states that making and recognizing kin is perhaps the hardest and most urgent challenge humans in and of the earth face today, although in the deepest sense, all earthlings are kin. I see this as a call to build from the queer concept of found family to the idea of kin, which also includes non-humans. In our world today, a woman and her relationship with her cats is made fun of and seen as inherently less valuable than a human relationship. But is that really, or is that just a cultural bias against unmarried women, still pushing that women need to be under the control of a man and making babies? I wonder what they're going to start saying about plant moms. Taken as a whole, Scavenger's Reign is a story about relationships, and not just the heterosexual kind. Because relationships are part of nature, the underpinning of ecology, and people are also part of nature, all relationships are natural. There are friendships, a queer romance, symbiosis, parasitism, predation, all part of the story. They are at some level kin. It is this idea of kin I want to continue to focus on for the remainder of this video, as I think it is a really powerful idea to consider and incorporate into queer ecology and how we interact with the rest of the world. A world solely of heterosexual human relationships will not survive, not adapt in the face of something like climate change. We need queer relationships. We need non-human relationships to move forward. Scavenger's Reign and some other examples of non-human relationships in works by Studio Ghibli, particularly in Nausicaa and the Valley of the Wind, but also how Spirited Away centers a relationship between a girl and a personified river, remind me that there are plenty of non-humans that I have had close relationships with. And that is something I really want to reflect on more. Those beings that have impacted my life or I have fond memories of, my non-human kin. Whether they were an animal or plant that lived alongside me in my home, various individual animals I have fond memories of spending time with, whether an orangutan I hung out with, the scrub jay we used to give peanuts at my grandmother's house, the turkey that came by every day during lockdown, several trees I see regularly that I naturally want to acknowledge as I pass, or for a particular example of my close non-human kin, I even have a sibling tree, a tulip tree horribly outside their native range that my parents planted when I was born, which is so fucking cute, and I only recently began to appreciate that in full. Like I literally have this non-human that has always been part of my life, and I have this deep connection to, as we have both grown up together. What the end scene of The Survivors on Vesta shows is a multi-species future, a future where more than just humans matter. That is perhaps what we must strive for here on Earth today, a future for ourselves integrated in the ecosystems we have tried to push away from. Perhaps that is the actual second season of Scavenger's Reign. It's going to be hard. None of the humans in the show achieve anything similar to Levi, fully subsumed into the heartbeat of the planet. But then again, they are human, and part of that might just be using an ecosystem to your survival advantage. That is just what we do. But perhaps we can realize our full potential as ecosystem engineers to maybe do things for our kin for their own sake and survival as well, not just our own. So, what does making kin mean for you in your life?